I I lost my dad a few years ago. My dad had been a lifelong smoker, 4 to 5 packs a day at the worst. Um, Three probably most of the time. I remember that I'd noticed one time that the only way I ever saw my dad was he had one or two things in his hands, a cigarette or a fork. And at the end of the meal, as he's putting the fork down with his right hand, he's reaching in his pocket for the cigarettes with his left hand. Well, 4 years prior to his getting ill, he cold turkey quit cigarettes. Um, never picked one up again. One Christmas Eve, he just decided he wasn't smoking anymore, and he never did. Unfortunately, he didn't quit soon enough. 4 years after he quit smoking, they found that he had a tumor in the lower lobe of his right lung. They went in, they did surgery, removed the lobe, and for a time he was getting better and better, but they had warned us that there was the beginnings of emphysema in there. Emphysema, unlike lung cancer, is incurable. They can give you things that lessen the effects, but that's it. Well, about 4 to 6 months after the surgery, the emphysema started making itself known. Dad spent a whole lot of time in the hospital, but I had heard a song that I hadn't thought about for years right around the time that they found the cancer, and it was Mike and the Mechanics, In the Living Years. And one of the lines is, it's too late when they're gone to admit we don't see eye to eye. I think I just butchered that. But anyway, the message was very similar to what you were doing, of don't let those things go unsaid. And I worked very hard throughout Dad's illness to make sure that everything that I needed to say got said, and that I heard everything he needed to say. Now, my dad and I never had a great relationship. But I think we kind of came to an understanding with one another at the end. And I was the pipeline for the family. My mother is one of those people who cry all the time. No matter what happens, she'll cry. She used to joke that she cried at grocery store openings. So she could get through telling me what was going on with Dad and asking me to meet her at the hospital usually, which I did. But my brother and sister live out on the West Coast. We live around Atlanta. And so part of my job was calling Pam and Phil and letting them know what had happened with Dad this time. And I have to say, after a while, I felt like I was the Grim Reaper's answering service. And I know both my brother and sister said that for a while they would kind of cringe when they saw my name come up on the caller ID. But that's beside the point. The fact that I did all that with my dad meant that when Dad finally died, I agree, you're not ever really ready for it. But in this case, I felt more that this was a relief for my father than a loss for me. That it was so bad for him towards the end. He had talked about feeling like he was drowning all the time. And I saw him when he had just died. He was in a hospice, and they had called the family to let us know that Dad had passed. And his face was truly horrific. You could tell he fought for that last breath that he took and was desperately trying for another. But the folks at the funeral home did a marvelous job, and my dad looked like my dad when he was in his, what he used to call his Marion and Berrien suit. It's what he wore if he went to a funeral or a wedding. Simple black suit. And seeing him there and knowing that I had said everything and that I felt like Dad had said everything didn't make it easy, but made it a lot easier. At the funeral, at the graveside, I spoke, and I also read some stuff my mom had written that she didn't feel like she could get through saying without breaking down, and so I read her stuff. My sister got up and she talked some. My brother chose not to, and it's all a matter of how different people take it. I mean, I don't feel like there's something wrong that my brother didn't get up there and say something, because it hit all of us differently. And I have to say, that's the only death out of people close to me that have died where I really felt, I don't know if at peace, but I felt like they had done all they could do and lived as long as they could, and that it was time for them not to be there. And while that's a horrible thought, and I felt bad that my dad wasn't still there, and I said, and it doesn't matter that we didn't have a great relationship. There's still a lot that I learned from him. And some of it I learned from positive example, some from negative example. He is definitely the reason that none of his kids smoke, because we watched him all our life smoking heavily, and was not a good thing. But I seem to have done much better with Dad's death than my brother and sister did, who both live in California. They were not able, it's hard to say aloud, but they were not able to be with Dad as much during the end. I had a job where I could hang out the gone to see my dad at the hospital sign, and my boss was fine with that. Not many people get that one, but I did. So I had good bosses, and I think probably part of that was the fact that the couple that owned it, the husband, had lost his father not too long before that. But I haven't done the same thing with other people in my life. And I feel like after listening to you, maybe I need to reassess how I talk to the rest of the people I care about or that are parts of my life, and maybe do them the same way I did with Dad, and make sure that everything that needs to be said is said, so that if suddenly my mother, my brother, my sister, or God forbid my son, and God forbid coming out of an atheist is kind of an interesting thing that, you know, it's one of those phrases you learn growing up, but I think I need to make myself ready in case any of my people pass away on me again, because it's going to happen, or I'm going to be the one that passes away and they have to get ready for it. I'm in my late 50s and I'm on disability and not in great health, so It's just as likely that they're the ones who end up dealing with, oh, I didn't say all this stuff to Paul while he was here. But thank you very much for reminding me to do that. I really appreciated your little message with that. And I hope you do well with your father as he nears death. And it sounds like you don't have the advantage I have, that my dad, until he went into hospice, which was the last week or two of his life, was not medicated to the point that he was not able to communicate, nor had he had a stroke or something like that made it hard for him to communicate. Now, a lot of times he couldn't talk for very long without getting out of breath. He was on oxygen for most of those 7 years. But yeah, I need to go out and talk to the rest of my family and to friends of mine. I think less so with my friends, because most of my friends are kind of pseudo family. They're close enough that I would think of their passing the same way I thought of my dad passing. But anyway, thank you. You have a great day.